Great Tuesday. Welcome to the King Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my second guest for today, um, Rachel Ann. And welcome to the King Connections podcast. Rachel, how you doing today?
Pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and I'm excited about this.
If you can turn your speaker volume up just a little bit more, your voice can
Sure.
come in strong.
Yeah, it's as loud as it goes.
There you go.
Hopefully it works.
Seems to be a short because it goes in and it goes out loud, but we'll work through it. So the first question I want to ask, first I want to thank you for investing your time and your energy with being on the show. And before we get started with the show, I want to ask you a question I always start my show off with every meeting, every gathering. It's just really to see where you are mentally and spiritually right now in this moment. And that is to ask you, what's your spiritual energy number between zero being life sucks to 10 being life is awesome in this moment right now?
Right at this moment, I'm going to give it a 10.
You said, did you say 10?
A 10. For this very moment, yes.
I love it. I
And
love
what a way to transmute the medical system's numerical rating chart.
it. Well, thank you. And I appreciate you answering that question. And I love the fact you added 10. And the reason I asked that question, now I explain, is that for me, I'm a person who truly believes, as Einstein stated, that energy is everything and everything is energy. And when you really understand that, then next thing you understand that energy operates in one or two states, either a drainage or as an increase. And people have lives obviously before they come to meetings and podcasts. So a person can had a argument with their spouse or their child got dropped off and an argument with a teacher or whatever right before they hop on a podcast. And the energy in that moment might be a four just because of what happened. So out of respect for the energy they're bringing, sometimes it's best to reschedule things when a person can be at their best. And then that way that you give your best and love comes through as opposed to a person just checking it off on their to-do list. I got it done, but now it's going to be recorded forever and people are going to see it. So it's best to do it for when people are at their best. And I believe that once two people connect, because I'm at a 10 as well, that's where miracles happen. That's where you can produce something of infinite possibilities because two people are aligned at a high energy level and our vibrations there. So you never know what's going to happen. So thank you for indulging me with that question.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I think I didn't hear you if you said something.
I said thank you. Yes. I
Oh,
hope that this doesn't, the volume doesn't create an issue, but I'll do my best to speak up too.
yeah, we get through it. No problem. Now, one other thing I want to ask before we really get into our questions is for you to tell me something good. And it could be anything that comes to your heart and your mind.
I'm alive.
I love that answer. I love that answer. You know, to that point, and that's what I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, is because one of the things that I've learned on my journey, and my background is engineering, I'm a system engineer, and I've gone through all the Stephen Covey, um, Napoleon Hill, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra. I've done the spiritual, I've done the systems. So I bring that background, and then I think in frameworks. And in thinking in frameworks, what I've realized on this journey that I'm on, I found a better definition for me for gratitude. I used to say gratitude, and I still say gratitude all the time. I used to think it was just another way of saying thank you. And I've learned now through this journey I'm on, it's more than thank you. And for me, my definition of it is it's a state. It's a state of being where once you go through the list of things that our society tells us are small, but they're really big in the context of things such as I can see, I can hear, I can talk, I can breathe, I have sound mind, I have life. That's your abundance. And once you understand that, because if any of those things are gone, no matter what else you're thinking about, working on, how big the dollars are, how much the deal is, whatever it is, will fail in comparison if any of those things were missing. So once that state enters of bliss of being abundant there, then you can take on any other problem that comes on. And that's the challenges of life. So when you said life, I resonate with that 100%. I just want to say thank you for saying life and being in that light in that context.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Now I want to read a little bit about your bio and let everyone know why I want to bring you on the show and um, your fully human essence that you are and why that we should listen to you. So, forgive me, this is an introduction I wrote for you. I call it A Degree of Light and Truth. Today, I have the profound honor of sitting down with a woman whose life is a living testament to the power of inward journey. Rachel Ann's an intuitive guide, but more than that, she's a seeker who has mastered the art of turning outward adventure into inward revelation. Rachel, I want to give you the flowers today for the immense courage it takes to face oneself's honesty in a world that's constantly pushing you. You have chosen the path of allowing. You remind us that our greatest treasures aren't found in a map, but in the silence of our own hearts. I am particularly moved by the mission you are birthing in Goddess Tears. Take a moment of deep personal discord, your own health crisis, and transform it into a platform of service for others is the highest expression of generative power. You're proving that a life inspired by love and service to humanity is just a quote from Alma. It's also a reality that you are engineering every single day. Your frequency is a gift to this tribe. You present the truth that when we stop, pause, and reflect, we don't just find ourselves, we find a creator. I'm honored to have your light and your heart in this space today. Welcome to the King Connections podcast.
Mm, thank you. I think I just boosted up to an 11.
Well, great. I love if I can raise your state. That'll give me that'll raise my state, and that's the quantum entanglement that we both will be vibrating from.
Yeah.
So let's kind of get into discussing you and why you're here in your journey. So I'm going to ask questions in phases based off energy again, and I came up with a framework that I look at as 8 forms of energy that our bodies have. That we have either in drainage or we have increase, and be need to be mindful of the increases as much as we possibly can, and understanding when the drainage is there, what part to really address. So we start off with the physical energy, and you are currently having a health crisis. Crisis, I'm sorry. Yet you are simultaneously architecting goddess tears to support others. And see, to me, that is the highest form of love, which is one of the 8 energies that I see in action. So, from an engineering standpoint, what are you sourcing the physical energy to build this platform when the body itself is demanding so much of your current?
I guess I'm sourcing my deep desire to be in service and to help someone else. And because I know personally what obviously what I've been through and the intensity of the struggle uh, that I've had to go through with all of this. If I can alleviate just one person's intensity, even a tiny bit when they're going through something as enormous as what I've been going through, then yay, I win. We all win. And
You know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Will you finish?
no, just the idea of being able to help someone somewhere down the road somehow.
And see, to really just have that kind of mentality right now is just incredible to me. And it really speaks a lot to your character. And I'm a person who I believe, and that's why I put myself on a 180-day journey, that I want to, in this final chapter of my life, I should say my fourth quarter of my life, I want to live love and not just talk about it, not write about it, not hope for it, but actually live it. And for 180 days, don't worry about making money, but being good and letting the universe bring me the money that's going to bring me based on the value I bring to the world, right? And really believing in that. And you are helping me do that because when I met Jess, and that's how I met you, it tests me. It's like, King, if you really want to be about this work, then here's somebody we can lift up. And see, for me, lifting you up was, what is her mind state? How does she feel? What's her spirit like? That was my concerns. Because I want I wanted to see someone who I can get you lifted up as well. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has this quote. He says, "We are a chain. We are linked together indivisibly. I can't be who I ought to be until you can be who you ought to be." And see, I look at that as a way of saying quantum entanglement for the folks who study quantum physics. It's still that same belief that we are connected. And when we see each other as human beings, our natural inclination is to love, it's to lift, it's to be helpful, to be there. And that speaks to my next question, which is going to focus on the mental energy level. Now, we talked about typically, in most people who have a health crisis, it creates what I call a static signal that blocks some of the, can block and create drainage. But you've been able to kind of still get that increase. So, how do you keep your mental energy clear enough to create a current resource network with your own vessel that can use it to deal with the pressure you're dealing with, and be as strong as you are, and still loving at the same time?
Well, sometimes it's not easy. It can be pretty challenging at times. But I think ultimately what I end up doing is dropping into my heart. It's always in the heart for me. And when I can allow myself to drop everything around me, the external world, and go into that space inside of myself, that's where the clarity lives. And that's where I can boost that mental capacity that I need to move forward. But it's not all inside of me either. I have people around me, and I have the world around me actually, that in noticing the little tiny things, the subtleties of beauty around me, acts of kindness, just in noticing those things, that fuels me. And it brings me back to a clarity and a surety in my mindset, in knowing what I'm doing is right in my heart.
Hmm. And you talked about heart, and that is going to lead to the next question. It's an excellent segue into dealing with emotional energy, which I look at as the third energy tier. And I know that you have on your website heart centered intuitive guidance. And I want to talk about what is that, and how do you move from, not you personally, but a person listening to you, how do they move from being a victim of a crisis into now they curating and getting heart centered guidance? How do they move to that state? How do you recommend that?
Well, I believe that our energies configure to each other when we sit in proximity, even when we're here on a call over the miles. I believe that we act as little computer systems in a way, and we configure. And I feel like there's no greater power than love. And in sitting in a space of love and compassion with someone else who's going through something, who's maybe not in that space necessarily with themselves, just holding that space for them allows their systems to neutralize, allows them to also settle in, and it also allows them to see the answers to the questions that they're asking without me actually having to provide them for them.
Mm. And how do you see God's tears? Tell me about the origin of that story, and what created that desire to build a nonprofit, and kind of what's the mission of it as well.
I was, oh boy, Goddess Tears was born of me lying in a hospital bed in a foreign country that I fled to because my own country would denied me medical care that I knew I needed because of insurance purposes and finances, etc. And lying there day in and day out, literally not being able to move because of such an intensive um, surgery that I underwent. Um, I was like, how can I help somebody else not have to worry about this, and not have to go halfway across the country or the world, excuse me, to find a surgeon that will do for them what they need. And if they have to, how can I help somebody do that? So I started thinking about the networking and the people I've met along the way and the steps that I've taken and how everything pieced together, all the synchronicities and all the dots that connected. And I was like, well, I think I need to, if I'm not going to be alive for very much longer, which I didn't think I was, this was almost 2 years ago now. And I thought this was it. And I'm just going to die here in a foreign country in a little tiny hospital room. But in doing that, I thought, well, at least the least I can do is try and help this from happening to someone else or alleviate some of it from happening the way that I went through it. And so synchronicity kicked in. No coincidences in my world. And an old friend of mine from grammar school reached out and contacted me just out of the blue and said, "How are you?" And I just, well, I happen to be laying in a hospital bed and I'm texting back and forth. And for some reason, I said my thoughts. I said, "Well, I'd love to like help people. I'd love somebody else to be helped. You know, if there's nothing else I can do, I'd love to help somebody else."
Mm.
And he said, "I can help you with that. I'm a financial advisor or something to those words. I forget what his actual title is." And the conversation went back and forth via text and drug induced stupor, and it started escalating. And by the time I was well enough to come back to the States and come back home, um, Goddess Tears was born. And not only was it born, but it was in the beginning stages of becoming its own entity
Mm.
just from a simple conversation and from a simple thought. And not only that, but from that person's act of kindness saying, "I can help you with that." You know, I, Goddess Tears has been generating that all along ever since it came to me. And I was like, what am I going to call this thing? What am I going to call this thing? And I'm laying there and like, I'm crying all the time because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to see my children again or my family. I don't know if I'll make it back on an airplane. I didn't know anything at that time. And what I did know was that there's a power bigger than me, God, Goddess, if that's what you want to name that power. And me being me, I said, well, I'm the feminine version, so Goddess, and I'm crying. And so Goddess tears, and those tears flowed, and that's where she began.
Wow, that's a great story. You know, I love hearing because my whole focus has been since I created my company, King Connections, has been connecting. As a matter of fact, I have connecting with intent, and I understand the importance of relationships and connections, and how people who you feel close to does something kind, what that does for you and them is that's when you quantumly entangle. When not just helping you just helps you, but it helps me, and then you helping others. So now it becomes exponential with the help. And people, I believe, we're naturally wired for that kind of activity. Like if we know for a fact that this is not going to a scam or that somebody's not going to misuse this, if trust is there and we can move with the kind of confidence and love we want to move with, that's when I see miracles happen. And the fact, but I think it starts with people who have to go through, and this is what I want to ask you, I want to set this context because I came to realization to me, I liken when you're going through something hard difficult, challenging. I call it the thunderstorms. And just like in nature, when thunderstorms happen, people look at those as being bad and dangerous and all those things. But in essence, thunderstorms actually create the nitrogen that does the oxygen that feeds regrowth. It fertilizes the soil and get those seeds that were burned, that were buried there. It gets them life and rejuvenate that. That's what happens in nature. So I liken that to you having those seeds in your mind all along from your life. And I want you to talk a little bit about kind of what's your background. I didn't really mention this specifically, but just share with our listening audience what your background has been and what work that you've done in most of your life so they can really understand the context, how these seeds now are growing.
Well, for most of my life, I lived a life of the norm, like I was supposed to.
Hmm.
Um, I worked with the Department of Agriculture for almost 20 years. It was good, but and it gave me the means of providing for my children and the time that I needed, and but there was always something inside of me, and even as a young girl, I was always fascinated with the mysteries of life and the mysteries of our world, and um, even through the times that I was working in that sector, I wasn't content, and I think you touched on this. I had an event happen where I fell and I injured myself, and it was probably the first time in my life ever that I injured my hip. First time in my life ever that I could not walk,
Hmm.
and it was shocking to me. But it slowed me down enough to say, "Oh, I I need to change things. This this is not in right alignment for me. This doesn't work." And so I slowly began going back into some of the things that I knew and I was carrying with me, and I was studying, and I had studied for many years different philosophies and different knowings. But now at that point, I started to really own it, and move into a new direction of living and understanding what I truly need, as opposed to, I wouldn't even say that. Maybe it was letting myself see who I really was, and not what the world had built me to be or what I was supposed to be. And when I started doing that, I started expanding who I was. And then I moved into only teaching yoga and breath work and doing coaching with people and energy healing work, and then I dabbled in it again. I jumped into consulting and I was miserable, miserable, miserable. So I left it again and learned my lesson. Finally.
You know, you said several things that I was thinking about when you said doing energy work and then yoga. So you obviously understand the importance of, you even said breath work. And I want to examine and go a little deeper into breath work. When you talk about breath work, what is breath work exactly for folks who may hear this and think they know what breath work is, but how do you look at what breath work is and its importance?
Breath work has so many different angles. There's a ton of different angles to breath work. So breath work can be used to release traumas. It can be used to um, build. I guess ultimately releasing a trauma is building, but it can be used to recall. It can be used. It's just it's a tool to bring your self, your with a capital S, um, to that understanding of who you are more clearly. Um, when I started doing more intense breath work, which I called it more intense breath work because it was like breakthrough breath work. Um, I was shocked at uh, some of the ways that I reacted because I'm like, I've been doing breath work for years. What? Wow. But it just it allowed me to uncover and cut through some of the layers that I didn't even know was there. So um, most of us walk around not even knowing that we're not fully taking a breath. We're shallow breathing, and so that in itself is breath work. Just to be able to, and the feeling you get when you allow yourself that breath, breathing in that life force energy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question so much as explained what it means to me, but breath work can be so many different things to so many different people. And I guess to me, I would categorize it as a tool
Mm,
for expansion.
mm. You know, you answered my question. You answered the way I wanted to hear it, the way I receive it. And my question is there certain techniques of to do breath work? Because you mentioned trauma before, but based on what a person's going through, is there different breath techniques they can do to kind of increase their energy?
Yeah, definitely. I'll go back to when I was overseas with my surgery. I leaned on breath work a lot just to keep myself calm. I was terrified, and just the simple act of breathing in and counting my in, and then when I breathe out to double that count and just allow myself to do that. And I usually like to imagine the ocean waves coming and going when I do that.
Mm.
Put a little imagery into it just to give it a little more umph. But that'll instantly bring you to a state of relaxation. And there's different things that you can do with breath work for sleep. Um, Boy, I haven't done it in a moment here, only for myself. I haven't really taught it to anybody in a moment, but um, breathing in to a specific count and then holding and then breathing out. And you can actually reset your nervous system, adding in a few yoga techniques to that, holding your ears and humming as you're letting out your exhale. And it's really amazing. I invite people to just give it a try and see how it makes you feel.
Well, I know that, again, going to the seeds planet analogy or metaphor, I'm a person that's ready for it. Because even when you were talking, I think that breath, and it felt great, and it's free. You know, I think that's one of the biggest things that most people don't understand. And I think it happens at birth that we're taught that joy, happiness, love are all external things to us. And we teach that to our kids, that you want joy, you get a toy, sweets, and those the dopamine hits. But when you can really find your center and just get quiet and realize that, as you say, you can find peace and joy internally by just learning how to breathe. And to show you how things work out, the universe, I call it the quantumness, the field. When Jess first told me about um, you doing breath work, and I've heard of breath work, I've done yoga, I've experienced some breath work and doing yoga, but not just breathing in general. Exercise, it was always attached to some other, whether I was doing martial arts, there's breath work within that, but never just breath work on itself. And just so happens the same day, I watched a show called Wonder Man. And there's this scene where this Wonder Man is this Marvel character that, because he can't control his energy, he has this quantum force of power that when he gets angry, it could just cause like a titanic explosion. So he has to learn how to calm himself down. And the gentleman said there's a, he called it the breathe in a box method. And he says you breathe 5 counts in, exhale 5 counts. Then you do that for, so you look like that's, you're familiar with that particular strategy.
Yeah.
So, and I was able to, because that seed was planted by Jess, but I was able to now lean into that. And since I've watched it, I do that every day now, just by watching that show and Jess aligning that. Had Jess not had aligned that for me, I probably would have just watched it and missed that completely. I thought, oh, that's interesting, but I probably wouldn't have applied it. But I applied it immediately. As soon as he said it, I applied it, and I applied it every day, multiple times a day, to just kind of, as you say, reset my nervous system. And I understand the importance of that. Now, that brings me to my next question. When you said, you mentioned the fact when you were doing yoga practice, and you said you hated it. And I was just curious, when you said it, what did you mean? Did you hate the people around? I mean, the hate working with the people around that, or you just the business of it?
Um, I never really hated it. It was hard. It was when I first started, I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this. And the more I did it, the more I fell in love with it. And that's why it's called a practice, because you practice and practice and practice. And some days I'm like, I'm not doing this. Some days I still feel that way. Many days I feel that way because my body's completely different now and I can't do many of the things that I used to do. But at least I can do some,
Mm,
and I can even imagine them. So I'm taking it from a whole other direction these days, but I also um, decided at one point, I did many different yoga trainings, and I decided I wanted to go more traditional. So I went and I stayed at an ashram for 30 days. And I'm telling you right now that if those swamis had sticks in their hands, they would have beat us with them. They were not happy people. but but after I left and I allowed it to integrate, I was able to really see what the messages were that they were sharing,
mm,
and how amazing it was that they were taking the emotion out of it and taking the um, like what you touched on a minute ago, the external needs that and desires that we think we have, that they aren't even needs, they're just desires and wants. And we're born with it. From the moment we're born, we notice, oh, we cry, so oh, we're gonna get fed. Ah, okay, I'll cry, so I'll get fed. Many people don't grow out of that. They throw a temper tantrum and they get something. So um, to be in around those people like the swamis, you know, with the imaginary stick, um, later showed me that they were giving the guidance without giving into the fulfillment of a desire
mm,
in order to get there.
mm.
So yeah, I guess I didn't really hate it. At the time I thought I did. And I usually don't use that word. I try not to use the word hate, so it's funny that but yeah, I can see clearly in those moments throwing my temper tantrum, like not getting anywhere, and then being able to look back after putting all the effort and putting all the practice in, like, wow, look at the progress I've made. Look at how I can carry myself and hold myself and and be content in myself.
Absolutely. What you're speaking to, and that's why I know that I'm on the right journey, because you know I go through this on this 180-day journey I'm on. I listen every morning. I believe that two most important times a day to control, that you must control, is the morning when you wake up and the evening when you go to bed. Those two times you have to be deliberate about what you're doing, because that's when your brain is more receptive to information coming in and everything else. And what I've learned is that I listen to affirmations 20 minutes every day of just affirmations saying, I see beauty all around me. Um, everything in my life that comes to me is a blessing, right? And I'm saying it over and over again. There's a lot of other things I'm saying with that, but I'm repeating that for 20 minutes. And as a result, what my attention was to reprogram that voice in my head, that voice that's there that just comes out of nowhere and says things like, you're fat, you're slow, you're old, that won't work, that she won't like this, he won't like that, that just comes out of nowhere. Where I think it's me. I used to think it was me, but now I realize I just observe it and said, oh, that's just that voice. So let me reprogram that voice. And doing that affirmations has reprogrammed the voice so much so that, and I'm on day 67, that I think in with clarity now. My thoughts, so I've changed the programmer, so to speak. So now that what I'm receiving is solutions, ideals, thoughts coached in love. And that's how I'm processing everything in my life now. So as a result, my question is always, how can I, when I come up with an idea, the next thing I want to do is I reframe it and say, now how can I do this with love? And see if it changes my direction, the angle I come at with, and not just how can I make money, right? That's a different desire, and that's going to lead you down a different path. And so now my question is that I want to set that context because I had to put myself through this journey of, so I want 180 days to move because you talked about the practice. And I think that's what so many people nowadays, they look for transformation, but they sold 30 days, 90 days, 6 weeks, you can become a millionaire. And people buy these gimmicks and because they want that speed. But what they don't realize is it's that practice, it's that time that you need to instill that habit, that consistency of just doing it every day to get that going. And as you said, once you've done that, you look back at the 4 3 years or whatever the time frame may be, as long as at least 6 months, and you realize I thought I hated it, but I actually do love it. And I see the benefit of it, and it's building for me. Which leads to my question now, and I'm curious if you can walk me back to you're in a hospital bed in a foreign country, which I think that's the worst nightmare most people want to ever have in their minds to be in a hospital in a foreign country. A hospital alone is not a joyful thing you want to do, but in a foreign country, that just amplifies it, makes it even more. And you were able to still find a silver lining in that, a blessing in that. What was in your mind to keep you open? Because, see, my question comes from this, if you can bear with me. I've been around people, a close friend of mine, utilizing these 8 energies. His soul energy is one of the 8. And when that's depleted, I think a person is broken when their soul energy is broken. And they don't resonate with common sense now because it drains other things. They're just in a hopeless spiral. How did you not find yourself falling there? Because you had every reason to be, rightfully so, and yet you still chose not to. I'm just curious how you were able to keep that blessing and focus on the love and knowing that you were going to get somewhere out. Even though you said you may die, your behaviors and your beliefs didn't say that. That thought may have popped in your head, but your behavior said something different. So how was you able to maintain that?
I used my tools that I had built up over the years in my life. Um, Number one, I had this beautiful mimosa tree outside of my hospital bed window, and I would watch the wind blow the little tiny petals and the leaves on that tree, and I would watch the birds come. And when I was strong enough to stand up, I would open the window and put my arms out in the sun.
Hmm.
When I wasn't strong enough, I would still look out at the mimosa tree. But I also would do my affirmations, which were I call them japas. I have beads. I call it they're mala beads, and I would go through them constantly, constantly, just to keep that fear out of my head. And I held them with me at all times, constantly, constantly, even through all the drugs. um, At one point, I told them I'm not taking the drugs anymore. I think it was day 4, and I was cut open from front to back. And I'm like, I'm not doing these anymore. They were bringing me into nightmare states. And I'm like, no more pain, no more pain pills. And they're like, but, and I'm like, no, mm-mm. So I did my japas, my mantras, my affirmations, and I held on to my dreams of seeing my boys, my children. I held on to the knowing that my partner was there, coming and going, holding my feet, showing me love. I held on to the kindness that the nurses were giving to me. And I held on to the knowing that even if this was it, that I'm able to feel this moment and I'm able to see these things, whatever it was in that moment. And when I walked out of the hospital for the first time, I felt the I've only talked about this with one person, I think. I felt the breeze and I felt the sun and I just broke down and sobbed. And Todd was there with me and he said, "Wow, what's wrong?" in a panic. And I'm like, "The sun, the breeze." And the hospital was in the middle of this busy city and there's cars going and there's people walking and there's exhaust. And I'm like, ah, it didn't matter. And gradually, each of those tiny little moments brought me a little bit further and a little bit stronger. And here I am. I'm here now.
You know, that's powerful, and I feel you. And I'm thinking about things I've gone through in my life that test you, the storms. And of course, when you're going through it, no one wants to go through it, but it's always transformational on the other end. And it helps me see this. And as I listen to your stories, this is what I believe. And talking to you on my journey now helps me prove this is correct. That blessings, the powerful blessings that impact the most people, only come to the people who've been broken and tested, right? Because you have to have that faith muscle very strong in order to take on a strong blessing. Because people who don't won't be able to handle market cycles and all the other things that life throws at you on top of just your human existence. And you need to have someone who's going to be the face of that, the leader of that has to have the ability to know I have the resolve to get through that. And I have the faith and the love to get through that. And that's what sets the culture and the heartbeat for the rest of the movement and people around that. And that's what I see the power behind God's tears that you're building, that you were able to receive that signal from him and then look at that as a blessing. And then say, I want that work. I want the work of creating that and being able to be there for others so they don't have to go through the pain that I'm going through. That is noble on every level. Now, for me, my purpose gets me out of bed. That's what gets me through those mornings when I may not want to get up. I'm too tired to get up because my physical energy is drained, my mental energy is drained, and I just want to rest. And but it's my purpose that gets me out of bed. It gets me up and gets me aligned now. Is that how it feels for God's tears for you?
Well, Goddess Tears is still in motion. It's still building, so um, it's not the only thing that gets me up out of bed. Um, right now, seeing this little tiny sliver of sunshine that comes through the curtain prompts me to get up because I like to go outside and look at the sun first thing in the morning. There's many days where I want to lay there and just fall in deeper into that hole. But I know if I do that, I become weaker. And not only do I become weaker, but I distance myself from life, and I have to engage. And I'm saying this not just to share it with you, but I'm also saying this like reminding myself of this constantly, that I need to engage. And I know that if I don't, and if I just lay in bed, I'm not engaging.
Can you still hear me?
I can.
My camera seemed to have frozen. I don't know if you saw that, but my picture is
Yes, you did.
frozen. So I just want to let you know I'm still here. I just
Okay.
have a frozen picture here.
Yeah, I see you. Well, yeah, you keep, now you're flashing off and on the screen, but
Yeah, that
I
was
hear
me
you.
doing it. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. I want to keep the conversation flowing. So I'm gonna turn my camera off because my picture is frozen there until I get something figured out. But because we're getting near the end of the podcast, I just want to ask you a few more questions. I'm still, for my own guidance, wonder how do you find space for others when you have your own needs? How do you rationalize that in your mind to say I could be kind and I could be considerate and I could be thoughtful of others when I have my own needs that I need to be worried about and my own concerns I need to be thinking about? How do you switch that to put that energy toward those thoughts towards other people?
Honestly, I've had many people ask me, what is it that makes you happy? And I remember being like 3 years old in my bed, and I remember saying to myself, I want to be happy. How come I can't be happy? I was 3 years old. Why did I think I was not happy? And for some reason, I remember that. And all through my life, when somebody's asked me what makes you happy, thing, the only thing that I can truly come up with that really, truly does make me happy is to see joy in someone else. That brings me such joy of my own. It's like a reflection. It's like to see other people happy, to see just to see somebody, a couple walking down the street holding hands, or to see someone helping someone else, or just being the witness to these acts and these ways of love and beauty that are around. That's what really brings me true happiness and fulfillment.
And see, I look at that as a. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been scolded for it. People say, "Well, no, what about what for you?" And I'm like, "But that is for me. That really truly is for me."
Mm. The fact that you understand it is powerful. And see, that's the frequency I'm talking about. A lot of folks don't that we may actually be close to are not vibrating at the same frequency and don't receive the messages the same way we do. And the fact you said that makes you happy shows what kind of person you are. That what I mean shows a lot of people can write in their LinkedIn profiles, I'm an excellent listener and I care about everybody and I live love every day. But then when their behaviors don't align with it, they're out of alignment. That's not integrity. What you're saying is truly integrity, that you are in line with truly finding happiness and helping others, which I think is powerful. And I want to ask you now questions about your statement of intuitive guidance. And when you act as a mentor, or you act, would you say that you're acting as, let me frame it this way. Would you say that in that space as an intuitive guidance, are you acting as a frequency tuner to help someone else turn a frequency to a different energy, a different vibration, or more of a mentor, just kind of helping a person understand how to create the, as you say, the protocols to kind of get them more in structure with their life?
Well, first of all I can ever do personally to help someone else is
Yeah.
something I know from my own personal experience. I can read a book and say, "Hey, I heard about this," but I typically won't offer something like that to someone. So I will offer only what I know has helped me. But when I'm talking about intuitive guidance, I'm that term came from a debate with my partner about channeling. I don't like the word channeling, and I definitely don't like the word medium, psychic medium. I'm not in tune with that because I think that we all are that. Um, so when I sit with someone and I allow myself to open up for them, with them, I'm opening up by connecting, by grounding myself to the earth and connecting to all that is. Because I believe that everything is sacred, not just the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad. It's all everything's sacred. Anything that is created by creator or however you want to call it and term it. And so when I sit with someone and I start to hear them and I start to feel them and I start to connect with them, oftentimes if I'm well grounded and well flowing, then messages will come. Sometimes a phrase comes. Um, Sometimes it's by means of a touch. Sometimes it's by pointing out, oh, your left shoulder has been bothering you. And it's just, it's guidance. And it's not guidance necessarily from me, it's guidance that's through all that is and shared. And it's really something that I had to learn to be confident about because sometimes I have to say I'm guided. I don't have to, but I'm guided to say things that sound weird. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to say this. It sounds weird. And somebody will say, oh my God, I can't believe you knew that. And okay, that was intuitive guidance that came through.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not something that's easy for me to explain. It's been labeled in many different ways. I think my dear friend Sayo, who's now passed, he said it best. He said, "Darling, you're just a oracle mystic. You never know what's coming out of you." I said, "Okay, I'll take that. That resonates."
You know, I look at that as you just been able to pick up frequencies that other people attendants are not tuned for.
Yeah.
You know, I have two other questions that I'll let you go with your day. And my first question is this: if you can tell me what's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen and describe it.
My babies.
I'm sorry, the,
My babies.
your babies, okay. And who are your babies? So a listening audience would know.
Andrew and Carter.
Okay,
My
excellent.
boys.
And share with our listening audience, what is your vision? And you describe it as much as you want of God is tears and how it's helping people. Just walk us through what that looks like in your mind.
My vision for God is Tears is for it to be able to generate an infinite amount of funds through an infinite amount of sharing and not only funding for people, but resources, networking resources. The more that God is Tears is shared, the more that the idea of God is Tears is shared, the more knowledge comes forth, the more ideas come forth, the more help and assistance comes forward, uh, the more opportunities come forward for people to get the assistance that they need because everybody's so incredibly different and every person has such different needs from so many different angles: nutrition, travel, medical, I mean, you name it, spiritual. Um, there's just so many angles where people can receive the nourishment that they need to just even get to the point of being able to have that quiet to enter into the space of healing. And then you have to follow up with the healing period, which takes even more time, effort, and resources. So my my dream for Goddess Tears is to be that network and to offer as much as can be offered through that platform, through that through Goddess Tears, funding wise, resource knowledge wise, networking. Yeah, and also to share the stories. I think that's going to be really, really important that people can feel free to share the stories.
I think that's powerful. I think that's a great vision. I'm sorry, you got space for one more question, and then I want you to give us your words of wisdom to leave on. I just wanted to ask you because we have a shared experience. I just want to get you on record about what your experience was with Mountains of Hope at Mountains of Hope.
Mounds of Hope saved my life. Again, for the second time.
Wow.
Yeah. My experience there was I had told you I'd shared with you about my going overseas for my surgery. That saved my life. And almost a year, well, a little less than a year later, um, my health was deteriorating again. Um, and honestly, I have to say it was because I had moved away from some of my practices that I shared with you. And I was falling deeper into a hole. I didn't have a network around me either. And I was just isolating myself. And, the old synchronicity kicked in, no coincidences. And I answered an advertisement that I thought, oh, this might be a scam, but I'm going to look into it. And one thing led to another. And I met the most beautiful people there. And the moment I looked out the airplane window and saw those mountains below, I I said out loud, "I'm home." And I have never been to South America. I have never been to Colombia, and I felt that I had gone home,
Hmm.
and I'll go back.
That's wonderful. I had a similar experience. It healed me in ways that I needed healing, and like you, I'm working to go back, and we're gonna work to go back together and build with Mike Murphy. So I just want to give him the recognition because that's our common thread is Mountains of Hope, and I wanted to mention that at least during the show. But as we wrap up, last thing I want to ask you to do is share any wisdom that you want to share with our group, what you're working on, whatever comes to your spirit, so they can know how to contact you if you want, or anything you just want to share that you want to leave as your parting words.
I feel like being guided, what I'm being guided to share is there's always hope, not to ever give up, not to believe in something outside of yourself, that you have an enormous amount of power beyond anything that you could ever imagine. And just to be able to tap into that, even a tiny, tiny bit, will bring miracles to you and joy to all of those around you. And I think that's really what I want to share, other than also stay tuned because Goddess Tears is about to break open and be a big deal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm gonna do my best to be a part of helping manifest guidance tears into the dream and vision that you shared. And I'm going to ask our listening audience to help us join us on this journey of helping others and showing that love is truly the most powerful source of energy to connect to, and it lifts everyone up in this process. So again, Rachel, thank you for listening, joining me at King Connections today. I apologize. My camera just went off. I don't know why my camera is going off. I think I got too many things open on my computer, and I'm draining its energy too much, and that's why it's acting this way. So I just need to reboot it. But we're gonna continue to build. I look forward to the infinite possibilities that our connection and things we're gonna create will yield. And so until next time, listening audience, please let's all connect with intent and live to be more fully human. Thank you all. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Thank you all.